Well, I can see that people are joining, so we can start. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. It's a pleasure to see so many people here today in our first joint webinar from the Global Building Network hosted by Penn State University with the World Green Building Council. I am Dr. Carolina Montano Owen, and together with my colleague Supriya Salhatan and this amazing set of speakers, we want to open a discussion on how can we transform the built environment to be back on track with the climate goals. Before we begin, I'd like to ask our audience to send us your questions through the Q&A, and we'll share them with our speakers after the presentations. So without further ado, I'd like to give the floor to Supriya. Supriya, over to you.
Thank you, Carolina. I just want to go a brief overview of Global Building Network, and then I'll turn it over to Caro for introduction to the speakers. So we are Penn State-led higher education institute network and have over 40 plus partnerships across industry, government, and universities, and network to network connections spanning several regions. So our mission is to really accelerate decarbonization of the built environment through research, education, and dissemination, kind of building on the idea that hard technical solutions are insufficient, and success with decarbonization really predicates on making significant investment in building transformative partnerships. So we do that through empowering students, early career researchers, and practitioners to work on community-focused, interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary research challenges. We work on upskilling through courses and micro-credentials with industry partners, and also dissemination to enhance global-local synergies. If you'd like to know more and talk more about how we could collaborate, that's my contact information. So I'll turn the floor over to Caro so she can introduce the speakers. I'm very excited to hear from all of them, as one of the topics is about partnerships.
Thank you, Supriya. And before I hand over to our speakers, I'd like to give a brief introduction about the World Green Building Council. I like to define the World GBC as a global community where we are representing and bringing together a network of over 40,000 members of the building sectors. And we do that through our current 80 national green building councils and over 40 global collaborating partners. So a little reflection of where we are and what we need. And I think you are all familiar with the impact of our sector, and unfortunately, the negative impact is sometimes leading the conversations because our cities are producing over 70% of the greenhouse gas emissions, and we are consuming around 50% of the resources globally extracted. And we need to change this trend because, among other reasons, over 900 cities are subjected to extreme heat weather by 2050. But our sector has a big impact in our lives and our economies, plus it has a huge potential. The global construction industry represents approximately 13% of the global economy, which is about $10 trillion and 7% of the global employment. And our sector has the potential to reduce around 37% of the global carbon emissions, lead population out of energy poverty, and mobilize sustainable investments. And this is exactly the message that we are bringing to COP and that we brought to COP last year. And I think we are in a great momentum to deploy faster action. Because the truth is that we are behind to achieve the climate goals. On one hand, we have the Sustainable Development Goals, which were set to direct peace and prosperity for people and the planet now and in the future. But we have heard from the United Nations that the current climate goals and the SDGs, including the decarbonization of the built environment, are currently off track to meet the climate goals. But we have also heard from other organizations that the SDGs should be updated. And looking specifically at the climate goals, the Global Stocktake report released to open and direct the conversations at COP28 claimed that the progress is too slow and the likelihood of meeting our 1.5 degrees goal is just about 14%. So in response to that, we have some global actions, most of them coming now from COP, that I invite you to read afterwards. But I'd like to highlight that a lot of the outcomes to action comes through the national determine contribution, as they say the quantitative targets, but also the specific actions. But we want to hear today from an expert from three different but overlapping points of view with the industry, the city authorities, and the academia. Before that, I just want you to invite you to visit our website where you can see that we tackle all these thematics and different task forces, and we also have these reports available to you so that you can use it with your networks. But please let me welcome our speakers. So we have today Sonny Wismer, the Stakeholder Engagement Lead at Brightworks Sustainability. We have James Slattery, Construction and Demolition Zero Waste Senior Coordinator at the San Francisco Environment Department. And we have Dr. Wei Chen, Interim Director of the UCL Center for Sustainability and Real Tech Innovation. So please, Sonny, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you, Caro. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm really excited to chat with you today about the SDGs and how we can meet them, and also share some examples from industry with you on how we are meeting them. So first, I just to get the intro out of the way, I'm Sonny. I come from a company called Brightworks Sustainability. This is my contact info. I'm going to share it at the end too. So if you want to follow up and chat about any of this, we can. Brightworks has held a position of trust, leadership, and innovation for over 20 years. We're based in the United States, headquartered in beautiful Portland, Oregon, where I'm speaking to you from today. But we are global, and we're very excited to be opening up an office in London this month. So excited to be a little closer to our friends at the World Green Building Council and many of you on the call today. Here's a little bit of what we do. Brightworks started out in, I would say, ESG and sustainable organizations. We were founded by some folks who were very forward thinking in that area, but then we actually did pivot to take advantage of the great interest in green building in, I think, the early aughts. And we've stayed in that space, though we do continue to now work in the sustainable organizations, ESG space, a lot more than we used to as that's grown in popularity. I wanted to first cover a little bit of what I think we all know about the SDGs, and that's they're difficult to apply to the built environment. There's a fantastic decolonial thought leader, Dr. Jason Hickel, and I don't use that phrase lightly. I think that that's an overused phrase, but I really do think that Dr. Hickel is a wonderful thinker in this area, and he has identified a few problems with the SDGs that I think are particularly applicable to the built environment. First, it's not metrics based, and I'll get into why that's a problem a little bit in a second. The second is that there's a lot of emphasis on growth to bring folks out of poverty, but no real thought, or again, no metrics for accountability into the equitable distribution of that growth. And finally, he asks us to consider if structural poverty is left unaddressed by the SDGs. And I would argue that it is. I would argue that a lot of things in institutions coming out of Bretton Woods are, and I think that that applies to the conversation we're having here today, but I'm not going to get into that too much today, but I'm happy to have that conversation with folks afterward. So what are the new metrics for transformation that we need in order to tackle this problem in the built environment? Well, we're going to want them to be holistic, so that way things are equitably distributed. We need to make sure that they're measured by outcomes, that we have metrics for accountability that fit our sector. We need to make sure that these metrics are also validated by performance. Prediction, process, many of these things green building standards today cover. They're necessary, but I would argue they are highly insufficient. It's not going to matter if we only measure and abate 70% of the carbon in our buildings. We have to find it and abate it all. And then finally, we need to make sure that we guide collective advocacy. As you all may have seen in the recent World Green Building Council water report, it's illegal to collect rainwater in some parts of the world. That's just one example of a problem that we have here in the United States and other places that I think needs to be addressed. And finally, these things need to be evolved through application. Many of the applications that we work in the global north are not applicable to the global south, and vice versa. These standards and applications and ways that we're asking folks to work and what those metrics look like are going to be different, and that's okay. So I do have a framework that I'd like to share with you all. Some of you will be familiar with the Living Building Challenge coming out of the International Living Future Institute. And this slide actually that I just shared is one from their deck on the Building Challenge. And I would invite you all to consider this framework as a great way to tackle those metrics. It's one of my personal favorites. These are the petals of the Living Building Challenge, asking you to create buildings like flowers that are beautiful, rooted in place, collect all their own water and energy. And these are the imperatives of the Living Building Challenge. So wanting to make sure that you are including universal access, thinking deeply about inclusion, human scaled living, access to nature, not just zero, but net positive water and energy. How are you giving back more than you're taking from the grid? And a couple other things like responsible sourcing, responsible materials, net positive waste, that I think the SDGs posit, but don't include metrics and process to achieve for. The Living Building Challenge does. So I would invite you to check that out in your own time. Because what I really actually wanted to talk to you about today is where I think both the Building Challenge and the SDGs are a little thin. And this is where I think the first imperative of the Building Challenge touches on it. And this is almost verbatim what we see in the Sustainable Development Goal number 11, in that enhanced function community places where projects are trying to tackle these sorts of connections between people and place. So looking at, again, sustainable cities and communities, ILFI calls this the ecology of place. I think there's a lot more that can be done to really address this portion, which, as you'll see, they've sneakily put it at the first part of the Living Building Challenge, because you really have to get it right in order to achieve the challenge. And I think you really have to get it right to achieve the promise of the SDGs. One resource that I found particularly helpful in my own journey in stakeholder engagement or ecology of place or stakeholder capitalism, there are a lot of names for this, but in really convening and bringing folks together around doing this right and being in relationship with one another, is the Regenesis Institute for Regenerative Practice. They have a fantastic course called the Regenerative Practitioner Series that I found really helpful in my own convening journey, especially in creating a community of practice with like-minded folks who really want to dive in and get to know frameworks, processes, tools, and also do the hard internal work of understanding how we ourselves may be contributing, and instead asking who we need to be in a given meeting situation. Do we need to be loud? Do we need to be quiet? Do we need to listen actively? Do we need to offer ideas? Or maybe sometimes it's not our turn to speak. So I would, again, invite you to check this out on your own time, because I found it very useful. So I've talked a little bit about the processes in doing this work that I found helpful, but now I'd like to share with you a little bit of what we've been able to do at Brightworks using some of these frameworks and ideas specifically around vocation of place. The first that I'll share with you is a more traditional example from the built environment. This is Project Phoenix. You may have seen this in the news recently. It was picked up by Arch Daly. Thank you, Arch Daly. So this was a big collaborative project by which we and clients and partners, Factory OS, Autodesk, MBH Architects, Chrysler and Associates, and Ecovative, which is a mycelium company some of you may have heard of in other aspects of your work, were able to greatly reduce the number of days it takes to build modular affordable housing by installing a grown mycelium facade on the front of the building. So this more than halved. I think we went from 6 months, as you see in the diagram, to 10 days, allowing us to really speed up the scale at which affordable housing can be deployed by our clients and partners. So really excited for that collaboration, but it really was something where those skills from those places and ideas really come into play, bringing people together in order to have that conversation. I'd like to give a particular shout out to my colleague Yukari for leading much of this work. She's amazing. I'd also like to then mention another example. This is the Common Materials Framework. So this is an example of how Brightworks works with nonprofits and other organizations in order to convene stakeholders and make sure that folks are on board and understand the impacts of this work for them. So we aligned a number of different, hundreds in fact, of material EPDs or material passports into a single framework. Looking across 5 different indicators, we were able to work with academics, manufacturers, among others, all convened through the nonprofit Mindful Materials. And again, this is where now anyone in the world can go to the Mindful Materials library and look up and use all of these different EPDs and passports at once in order to make the most informed decisions about responsible materials across human health, climate health, ecosystem health, social health and equity, and circular economy factors. So really breaking down and separating out so you can compare materials to each other where before they would not have been comparable at all. And the last example I'd like to show you, so moving from the manufacturing sector into digital infrastructure is something that I've personally been involved in and am very passionate about. I'd like to actually back up and thank my colleagues, Jeff Frost and Jack Dinning, for their incredible work on this project. They have been leading this, Jeff, for several years as one of the founders of Mindful Materials. So thank you, Jack and Jeff, for that. But this is the one that I've been working on. We at Brightworks were approached by this fantastic organization about 3 years ago now called Infrastructure Masons, and they wanted to launch a climate initiative. We were all too happy to help as we do a lot of work in the data center sector. Data center sector and digital infrastructure is very interesting. The impact is rapidly growing, but I think the promise of this sector and the potential it has to allow folks access to the internet and the means to bring themselves out of poverty and participate in the global economy in new and innovative ways is bar none. And so I think abating emissions in this sector is perhaps one of the best chances we have to realize the impacts and promise of the Sustainable Development Goals. And so this is just a bit, I'll just let you read on the draft goal and objectives that these companies on the governing body are planning to try to get approved within. So it's individuals on the governing body are trying to get this approved within their corporations in order to apply this in their supply chain. So we're not done. This is very much a sneak peek and a rough draft, but I think the goal is the same as the SDGs. And it's really bringing industry together and working with their project teams to align around these goals that's going to get us there. So that's everything from me today. Thank you all so much. I hope that that was helpful. I realize I went a little out of order, Caro, in talking about what I do to before how I apply it. Might have been more interesting to go the other direction, but that's why we're recording, I think.
Thank you, Sonny. That was amazing. And thank you for that sneak peek. And yes, I'm very excited to see all these projects and how you are applying. So bringing the goals into these practical projects is really, really nice to see. And I'd like to share maybe more thoughts later on how can we deploy that in different places around the world. So thank you very much. But I'd like to give the floor now to James. James, please, over to you.
Thank you. Give me a moment. I will share my screen. Hey, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, all. James Slattery with San Francisco's Environment Department. We're a city agency, sort of like your public utility, your Department of Public Works, your transit department. We are tasked with advancing climate protection and enhancing the quality of life of all San Franciscans. How we do that is typically by researching problems that are environmental or community health in nature, and when appropriate, we'll develop interventions. These are typically some combination of policies, programs, partnerships. We were also the agency that authored the City Climate Action Plan, updated in 2021. That's charting a pathway to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions, also working to addressing racial and social equity, public health, economic recovery, community resilience, and providing safe and affordable housing to all. Many of the programs at the Department of the Environment, some examples are the one I work on is zero waste. It's my team, but we have programs rooted in energy, focusing on transportation. And today I'm going to focus the majority of the presentation on some cross-programmatic work that's trying to address embodied carbon reductions. This is building off of a long history of trying to implement zero waste focused programs. A keen example of this, or programs and policies, I should say, and a keen example of this is our construction and demolition debris recovery ordinance established in 2006. C&D, construction demolition, discards represent about half of the city's total municipal solid waste. So we generate about 3 million tons of municipal solid waste a year. Half of that's coming from the building activities that we're permitting. That then translates to about 25% of the overall disposal that we're sending to landfill. We're sending about 600,000 tons a year to landfill. 25% of that's coming from the building industry. Give you a sense of scope of our building activities, typically permitting about 50,000 activities a year. We've got hundreds of hauling companies and dozens of facilities that are trying to process this material prior to disposal. But our 2006 ordinance is essentially a prohibition, a ban on direct hauling to landfill. Got to go to the recycling markets, the reuse markets, or process for recovery rather than direct disposal. We've got, though, about 2 decades now of experience and data to reflect upon, and we can state definitively that most of the products being integrated into our structures cannot be recycled. Compounding that problem is that the building activities are far outpacing our ability to develop recycling markets. So really, in other words, we're not going to be able to recycle our way out of a climate crisis. And that compelled us in 2018 to refine our approach towards zero waste. We did that at the Global Climate Action Summit that was hosted here in California. This was a direct response to the then President Trump administration withdrawing from the Paris Accords, and California's then governor convening about 40, 50 subnational entities with the intent on honoring those commitments without the support of the federal government. I'll come back to the picture on the left in a moment, but essentially the shift in focus took away from just looking at what's going into the landfill and recognizing the greenhouse gas impacts that come even from those desirable outcomes like recycling. So now the goal is really to reduce the generation of waste by 15% by 2030, in addition to cutting down our disposal numbers. So this forced our zero waste program, my team, to start working much more collaboratively with our green building team. That's the team that's typically talking to the architects, the designers, the developers, and owners. We convened a working group. We call ourselves the Building Materials Management Group. There's our webpage there for some reference to the work that we've produced to date. We also have expertise represented from our toxics reduction programs and our climate program and our environmental justice program. And the first order of business was really to lay out the take, make, waste linear approach to building. I promise you that if you took that slide, you could stretch it out. It is a linear line. And really what we're doing is examining the model of development and seeing how our current approach to building is driving undesirable outcomes, and seeing, can we identify any points of intervention that might be appropriate for our agency to take. There are no shortage of intervention points, everything from working with LCAs, EPDs, modular and prefabrication in the design phase, design for disassembly, deconstruction, adaptive reuse, addressing surplus. And so this was sort of our roadmap, and you'll see a lot of these elements have been distilled down and captured in our climate action plan. If you're going to go to sfcclimateaction.org, I would direct you to page 106, which captures elements of our responsible production and consumption strategies. There's multiple strategies nested there. For example, there's one that targets the aviation sector and looks to reduce emissions across the airline passenger journey. But I'm going to speak to the strategy that is looking to achieve total carbon balance across buildings and the infrastructure sector. Basically rethinking how we use common building materials and construction assemblies, because these really do present many, many opportunities to reduce embodied carbon. Here is that page 106, just calling out some of the supporting actions nested under that strategy. Things like advancing design for disassembly, procuring low carbon structural materials, amending existing building codes to require deconstruction, require adaptive reuse, require procurement of salvaged product in new construction, cultivating reuse markets, workforce development, small business and entrepreneurial innovation. You could see what success would look like there. At the top is by 2030, new buildings being constructed will have a 40% reduction in embodied carbon. There's an equity metric there that's measuring the tons of rescued building materials that are being rerouted and received by nonprofits, small businesses, BIPOC communities that have been impacted by environmental justice burdens. And so now I'll kind of leave the theory and come into the application for a moment and showcase some of the output from this cross-program collaborative effort. We went for low-hanging fruit first. 2021, we published the surplus. This was in partnership with some of the largest general contractors and developers working in the city. We generated a study to look at the surplus products that are being generated. These are products and materials that were purchased, not installed. That photo is a photo that I've taken myself. There was literally 6 sub-basements full of surplus product, pristine inbox that was, if it had not been staged and captured by the superintendent on the project, it would have been routed to downcycling and landfill and disposal. Instead, we were able to use this as an index case study to figure out why so much surplus is being generated in new construction projects and opportunities to route it. We ended up routing, I think, 45 tons to communities that had been decimated with wildfires, and another, I think, 50 tons went down. So we sent to the wildfire communities here in California. Another 50 tons went international down to Mexico to help with rebuilding after an earthquake. Next step was to convene, start building a network of material suppliers and receivers. And so we convened what's called the San Francisco Bay Area All for Reuse Owners Alliance. This is the largest real estate portfolio holders in the region. And they are dedicated and making pledges and plans to develop a network of building professionals that are committed to reuse in the commercial building sector. So we're looking at things like deconstruction, warehousing, risk redistribution of new, sending these materials to new projects that are specifying for them, really pushing for monumental change in how commercial buildings are being designed and constructed. Encourage you to go check out allforreuse.org. But this was all part of a strategy to bolster the network of material suppliers, who's generating it, who are the communities that need these materials most, these high quality building products at no to low cost. Build the network, then focus on the infrastructure. Could be virtual marketplaces, could be physical marketplaces. All of this in preparation to advance towards policy. This is an example of the virtual marketplace. We did this with Carbon Neutral Cities Alliance grant in partnership with a clean tech company, Reaply. We launched an online marketplace. Bay Area Reuse Marketplace was launched in early 2023. This is a snapshot of some of the listings on there right now. And again, this is all in preparation for supporting an inevitable deconstruction and reuse ordinance that will have 3 prongs: surveying structures for reusable product, requiring diversion of that reusable product to reuse outcomes, and then for new construction to be procuring from that marketplace. This will work well with adaptive reuse, which is trying to preserve as much of the structural elements. This would be going beyond the structural elements. And so here's a couple of examples of how we're building marketplaces. We've, for 30 years, had a small building material redistribution yard in the city. We recently issued an RFP to find a new operator and refresh that site. It's mostly focused on residential items. And then we did a study with Gensler Architects, Madrone General Contractors, and the reuse people, and looked at how we can start to repurpose state and local owned assets. That's what this photo is. It's the elements underneath the freeway viaducts owned by our state highway authority. And the study we commissioned there is showing how we can install a design for disassembly redistribution center to receive these products and redistribute them into the communities that need them most. I'll stop there and turn it back over. There's my contact info, and look forward to a Q&A. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, James. I'm very excited that we were able to show this example here today, because it's one of the ones that successfully has been holistically bring everybody together. So thank you very much, James. And now I'd like Dr. Wei Chen to please present. So giving the floor to you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Carolina. Let me share my screen as well. Okay, I hope it's working now. Hello everyone, this is Wei, and I'm the Interim Director at the UCL for the Center for Sustainability and Real Tech Innovation, powered by PG Real Estate. And today I would like to introduce something that we are working on within UCL, and it's really a collective effort from UCL working towards the SDGs, from its education activities, from its research projects, and also innovation and entrepreneurship activities as well. And we have a sustainable UCL team that's working to categorize and come up with policies, reports, and case studies on everything that we do within UCL, and demonstrate how we contribute and make an effort to create impact in different SDG goals. And for a snapshot, I've got SDG number 7, affordable and clean energy, as well as SDG 13 for climate action, which both are very closely related to what we are going to touch on today. And from the activities I mentioned for education, research, and innovation activities taking place at UCL, I think the strengths relating to construction built environment as well as sustainability in the industry, it's very closely relating to two major faculties in UCL. One is the faculty for architecture and built environment, and that's the Bartlett faculty. And another one is, of course, the Faculty of Engineering Sciences, especially computer science department, which works on a lot of things relating to AI and foundational algorithms within the AI area and data. So within the Faculty of Architecture and Built Environment, we do work on something, again, relating very closely with data and AI. For example, smart buildings. The smart buildings really explores the tools and methods to deliver data-driven smart buildings, which use digitalization technologies to dynamically optimize its operations. And to achieve this, a data-driven smart building utilizes live and historical data from relevant sensors, IoT equipment, mobile devices, and maybe other sources too, to provide situational awareness for informed decision-making. And achieving the optimization objectives will often benefit from advanced supervisory level automation driven by computational analysis. For example, machine learning, AI, etc., applied to the data available. And we also have digital engineering that seeks to develop knowledge and tools to support digital building delivery. And this covers both aspects of energy and information modeling. And the topics could cover advanced use of simulation or code simulation of a building, its systems, subsystems, control, and its users. And covers information modeling and management. It covers data-driven applications like smart energy management, demand response, and building to grid. And of course, it also covers digital building twins too. And here is also a list of recent projects that took place within that area, both within UCL for its research, but also in collaboration with external partners too. That was research, but this is also part of the education we provide as part of the MSc Master's course for Smart Buildings and Digital Engineering, with very relevant modules closely related to data and AI, for example, machine learning in smart buildings, building system modeling, etc., etc. And we also have the smart buildings and digital engineering projects as their final dissertation to finish off with some real world problems and solutions that our students come up with. Within the Bartlett Faculty of Architecture and Built Environment is a very important branch of it that work on energy. It's the Energy Institute. There are two research groups working on energy, especially one on energy demand and supply, one on renewable energy. So to look at high resolution energy data very closely in the past and for the future to analyze the balance between the demand and supply, but also trying to integrate the renewable energy into the grid, but with a well-calculated and reducing cost balancing mechanism, so that we can better predict, integrate the renewable energy into the energy system within country, but also trying to lower the cost for it as well. And we also have innovation and entrepreneurship activities that are taking place within UCL, and in this case, from Bartlett, that's contributing to the carbon reduction in the construction industry, especially in terms of cement and steel manufacturing. So the UCL spin out Carbon Re, founded and co-founded by one of our academics in the faculty, Bartlett. They created a digital twin, basically, for the manufacturing process in the plants making cement, and going to be in the manufacturing plants in making steel as well, to identify the points in the process where the large amount of energy are consumed, so they can use the technique of AI to analyze that and try to reduce the carbon emission from the processes. As this industry for cement and steel account for more than 20% of the global carbon emissions, decarbonizing this process will absolutely contribute to the climate challenges at the moment. And on the in the other corner of UCL, we also have the computer science department, where it hosts the sustainability and machine learning group as a research group, which really works on the foundational models for machine learning and AI. It also works on responsible AI and AI safety as well, so that it also helps to improve the ethical part of people who are trying to leverage the latest technologies to contribute to SDGs. Another very direct application of AI for the contribution to sustainability and SDGs is that they also work on climate and social environmental sustainability as well as nuclear fusion from that research group. There's also the education part of that research group. Affiliated to that group is the MSc, the Master Course on AI for Sustainable Development. So again, it's a course developed by the academics in that group, trying to leverage the latest technologies to empower the students to explore different kinds of technologies to help achieve the United Nations SDGs in different aspects, actually. And we can see the quote from the program director, Maria Perez-Ortiz, an academic in computer science. Without appropriate computational design and governance, the same technologies themselves have the potential to create cascading negative impacts, as they don't create marginal additional benefits to the society whilst they are still consuming energy themselves. This is the second part of the presentation I want to touch on, is the latest development in a strategic alliances between UCL and PGIM Real Estate. That's the world's third largest real estate asset management company in the world. And they are working with us on all education, research, and innovation activities that we can join hands on and align our ambition and vision to decarbonize and contribute to SDGs. For education, the center is sponsoring a number of PhDs, particularly within the AI and ESG area. It also sponsors MSc scholarships in biointegrated design for biointegrated materials for construction. And there are other, 3 further MSc scholarships for AI for sustainable development, financial risk management, and computational finance, for other types of applications within the industry to improve efficiency and contribute to sustainability. And of course, that the focus is on creating pipeline of talents that can work both in further research and industry to help with their goals as well. For research, again, it's leveraging latest cutting-edge research in AI, in property technologies, as well as in the finance area for ESG reporting. These technologies and research are taking place in faculties and departments like computer science and the Bartlett Faculty of Built Environment and Architecture. We'll also seek to create a pipeline of innovative ideas for startups, for spin-outs as well, for AI technologies, for latest emerging digital technologies, architectural materials, construction and design, and other emerging technologies in blockchain technologies, anything that's related to real estate, real assets, renewable energies, digital infrastructure, and everything, so that we can combine all the stakeholders together, from students, academics, industry experts, and of course the startups and spin-outs that I mentioned. And we, again, create a platform and community that we can join our efforts together to contribute to the SDGs. And I guess that brings the SDG number 17 partnerships naturally into the picture as well. So this is what I want to touch on today. Thank you very much for listening. And this is also my contact details if you would like to reach out for further collaborations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wei. That was very, very inspiring. I can't wait to see more results, but furthermore, the implementation of AI into more projects in our sector. So thank you. Yeah, I'd like to invite all of our panelists, and I have a couple of questions. Maybe Wei, if you can stop sharing screen so that everybody can see everybody.
Yes.
And I'd like to start with you, Sunny. So there are so many things that I like to expand on, but we don't have much time. But I think the first one is metrics and accountability, right? This is one of the biggest issues, not only with the SDGs, but with the climatic goals and with the projects that we have on. So very easy question, like what would you recommend for the sector to actually work faster on this issue?
I would say it starts with making sure that whatever programs you're using are third-party verified. And I would say prioritizing third-party verification of what you're doing, making sure someone's checking your work is key. I think that will help you weed out and find the best programs and frameworks to use. And I think programs and frameworks that offer like graduated sanctions, right, for different ways to verify that accountability to some of the things that I think we were all talking about today will help you be successful, because there's lots of frameworks and processes you can use out there, but making sure that you are actually verifying your performance at all stages is going to help you make better decisions and understand, okay, maybe we actually can't address this year, but we can address this based on budget and time available. And I think this is especially important for small businesses, right? A lot of the companies that need to make the switch are not big corporations with a lot of money in order to make climate adjustments. They're small companies with really thin margins. So making sure that those folks are focusing money on impact and verifying that impact, I think is really key. You don't need to all disclose to CDP. You don't need to all be making sure you're building a net zero energy building every time. But there are things that you can actively be doing as a tenant and as a leader in your community in order to push for change and switch over your energy grid and other bits and pieces like that. So that's sort of what I would like to say.
Thank you, Sunny. Yeah, definitely agree. James, and I'd like to come back to you. As I said, well, San Francisco has been one of the most successful cases because you brought together the whole community. So from manufacturers to the city authorities to research, I think, and of course, users. So I'd like to ask you first, what are the challenges that you encounter, how you overcome them? And for the cities that are trying to bring circularity, to have those holistic perspective for for decarbonization or action plans, what would you recommend?
I think you touched on maybe the fundamental element to begin with is the convening of as many stakeholders within the ecosystem as possible. So that could be viewed as time consuming and expending resources. But in the long run, it's going to generate the optimal outcome. And the reason I say start there is our agency is tasked usually with crafting some type of intervention. It's really easy to just say, write a law, let's just make a policy, let's ban something, let's regulate something. In fact, I've noticed a trend in the last 5 or more years where industry is coming and knocking on the door, and you have sustainability directors and practitioners embedded in institutions all around us, and they're saying, can't you just tell us what to do? Can't you just regulate us, make us do this? And yes, sometimes policy is the appropriate tool. More often than not, it doesn't have to be what you lead with. And so I think that the convening of the stakeholders can lead to partnerships and programs that shift practices, and they don't require the heavy hand of a law to come in. The reason I also try to go to the policy one last is it's for San Francisco, it's easy to write a law. Like there's a voracious appetite for sustainability focused policies and climate action, but it's really about successful implementation, and so rather than trying to help a politician grab a headline to score some votes in the next election cycle saying they passed this groundbreaking law, we're thinking it through to the implementation phase, and you have to be talking to stakeholders to meet them where they're at. Sometimes it's not a quantum leap that's going to be successful. It's going to be these small incremental measures taken by many folks in many different nodes in an ecosystem that make the whole system move together. So I think that would be the first thing, and that's why we're leading with that, rather than we want to have ordinances around adaptive reuse and deconstruction and procurement mandates for salvage product, but to have those be successful, you have to have a network that's engaged, and they have to have tools available to them to help them understand the whys and the hows of practice shifts. And so I would start with this deep, sustained, deep and sustained stakeholder engagement.
Successful implementation, yeah, that should be our goal. I like it. Thank you very much. I'm gonna hand over to Supriya with a couple of more questions, but I'd like to invite our audience as well. So please, if you have questions for our speakers, use our Q&A.
Yeah, so I have a question for Wei. I have questions for all of you, but let me begin here. Wei, you talked about AI and data in the built environment. I'm just curious, what's the take up been like? What are the biggest challenges in industry kind of adopting these tools? And you also mentioned governance. If you'd like to elaborate that on a little bit, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think it's a very good one. I think for the companies that we're working with, they do have loads of data. They do have loads of proprietary data as well by working with their suppliers, the providers, and their own data they've collected throughout the last, a few decades by working in the construction real estate industry. They have tried different ways utilizing the data, analyzing the usage of energy, monitoring the population flow, even monitoring, for example, the agricultural lands, try to make predictive models for real assets, construction, building prices, and try to monitor, for example, the industrial plants roof conditions so that they also can influence the insurance prices, for example. So loads of data points out there which can be commercially very valuable. But the challenge is, of course, not everything can work out, even if you apply the latest technologies, because some of the data is low frequency, some of the data were quite very much polluted, especially if they're from a long time ago where you can't validate, right? You were not in a position to validate it at a time with coupled with other conditions or other sources of data. So that's, I guess, the biggest challenge is utilizing data and recycling the data at a time. Now you have the AI technologies and foundational models to work on those. Maybe combine that with other source of data as well to cross-validate. And for some discoveries you want to utilize to both decarbonize, but also to improve the efficiency for your businesses. So we're revisiting some of the problems, both from the research perspective, but also from the business problems in the real world cases. And that's one. But for governance, I think, again, data privacy is one aspect of that. So we're being very careful in terms of working on the data that people may not be aware that's personal individual data that could be confidential potentially. For example, satellite data, spatial data, even postcode data, that we don't think they them being individual confidential data. But if, say, for example, for postcode, if there's only one dwelling for that postcode, then it can be regarded as personal data. And the same applies for satellite data, right? If there's only showing one dwelling or one building for one area that you have on your satellite images, then it can be regarded as individual, personal, even confidential data as well. So it's the data governance in the first place that we need to pay attention to. Of course, if it goes down the route of analyzing more individual data in terms of personal data, that as apparent as we can think as the individual names, addresses, and other things, there will be other regulations coming in. Hope that answers the question.
Thank you, appreciate it.
I'd actually love to, if I may. One of the examples I went over actually I think is a perfect illustration of doing this manually right now, and that is the common materials framework. So we have, of course, all of this manufacturing data. I'm going to jump ahead, jump back. And this is exactly where we at Brightworks are having to work manually in order to sort all of this manufacturing data that's all proprietary. It's all kept in different formats into something that is usable for AI, right? And this is the goal, is that now, once we've all manually sorted with folks who understand chemical cast numbers and all of these bits and pieces, and they can go through and actually organize the data into a single format from, honestly, tens of thousands of different databases across hundreds of different passports and EPDs, then now we can start building models off of it. And it's available for business and innovation to compare. But this is all being done very manually by our staff at this point, contracted to this nonprofit. And so but hopefully, and I would invite anyone, including you, to dive in and take a look now at what we've got and what we've started to work with, because I think it's getting to a place now where it'll be available to the market, which is very exciting.
It's very interesting because the most important thing we need to feed the AI algorithms or models is the quality data. And without that, the algorithm wouldn't work, right? So that's really the first step. And that's, I guess, the reason why we deploy other types of technologies, for example, IoT devices, sensors, so that we can partially automate that process of collecting data from different sources to validate the data you collected before, but also to reduce the process of manually putting some of the data, clean some data, so that they can be used for the latest AI models.
So we are coming up on the hour. So let me just close with one last question for all of you. So it's amazing, and I really enjoyed hearing all of you talk about the challenges that you faced within whether it's in stakeholder engagement or in other part in waste reduction or through strategic alliances, and the way you maneuvered or strategized around these challenges. So what would be, I suppose, your call to action, whether it's for stakeholders or students or industry? Like, what are the biggest gaps, and what would be your call to action? Is that something you'd comment on? James, would you like to go first?
The call to action for students and practitioners, I would say the call to action would be kind of building on what I said earlier, which is the problem is usually framed in as so significant, and it is. It's enormous that it's often daunting. But if I could offer advice to anyone who wants to be part of the solution, it would be to get engaged, because there are many points of intervention. There's many opportunities for different skill sets and knowledge bases to come to the table and participate. And like I mentioned earlier, it's going to take a basket of approaches and interventions. It's not finding the one sweeping magic wand that's going to course correct everything. And so it would be to come to the table, get engaged, because there's a place for everyone.
Sunny?
I would say do this in community. Find a few people that can come along with you and work with you on these types of issues. Or if you don't know who those people are, or if you have folks in the peripheral of your community that you think might be interested or are engaged in this work and you're not sure where to start, just go talk to them. Start talking to folks who have interesting ideas around getting engaged in this work and come up with something together. But you don't have to do this on your own. And I know myself and everyone else on this call are probably happy to chat with you, and we'll have loads of ideas or be excited for your ideas. And so if you have ideas and you're not sure how to implement them, start talking to people about those too. Just start workshopping those around. But don't let it all stay in your head. Just start talking to folks, and you'll never know who you meet or who connects you with the next person who becomes your business partner, or your friend, or the person that funds your idea, because there are so many passionate people who want to work on this, who are feeling stuck and who are waiting for the invitation. And so I would encourage you all to just be that invitation, send that LinkedIn message, send that text message, show up to that event. So that's what I would say.
Amazing, thank you. Wei?
Thank you. And actually working on something that might help with the call for action question. I'm applying for a very small set of funding internally at UCL to set up innovation network for all the stakeholders to join together, from large corporates, NGOs, even the United Nations is supporting it as well, for small SMEs, for startups in this area, all join together with the academics from different departments and faculties within UCL. So we can form a platform for discussions going forward, for networking events, for thought leadership events, white papers, academic publications. So we're looking for and really finding different ways of engaging stakeholders all within this ecosystem, so we can make a meaningful impact going forward.
Thank you. thank you everyone for joining, and all the participants. I hope you enjoyed the talks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. And yes, just echoing Sunny, reach out and we are here to help. So thank you very much and see you in the next opportunity. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for organizing.
Thank you, everyone.